Hello, I'm Oliver Bullough. Welcome to Hyde Park. For 400 years, Londoners have been coming here to freely speak, to freely assemble, to sunbathe, to horse ride, to do all the things that are most fun to do in London in an open space. But we're not here to talk about Hyde Park, we're here to talk about one Hyde Park, the building behind me, which is probably the most exclusive, gated community in the world. The epitome of what I call, in my new book, Moneyland. The penthouse up there was bought by a Ukrainian oligarch just under 10 years ago for £140 million. At the time, that was 800 times more expensive than the average house in London. The other properties have gone to the wealthy nomadic elite from all over the world. And their money has utterly transformed not just this building, but all of this part of London. Money has poured in from Angola, from Nigeria, from Kazakhstan, Russia, Ukraine, you name it. The money has come here and pushed house prices beyond the reach of any ordinary person. But the effect hasn't just been extraordinary on this part of London, it's been absolutely devastating on the countries where the money comes from. On Angola, where poverty is now appalling proportions, and Nigeria, where whole chunks of the country outside of central government control. On Ukraine, the part of Ukraine where that gentleman made his fortune is no longer in central government control. The money has been sucked out of places that desperately need it and dumped right here in a place where we really, really don't need it at all. And as we walk along, I'm going to show a few of the things that money gets spent on, some of the people who have been spending it, and why it is that we don't know anything about it. $1 trillion is stolen every year from the world's poorest countries and spent in places like this. $1 trillion is an enormous amount of money. If you were to count to $1 trillion, that would take you approximately 31,000 years. It's a vast number. And really, if you've got that much money, you need expensive things to spend it on. So what's it going to be? Well, cars, obviously. There's a McLaren concession here. Clothes, Burberry, watches. Watches are a good way of spending money. There are 3 Rolex concessions, one in one Hyde Park, one on the Brompton Road, and another one in Harrods. And just look at Harrods. Harrods is the most amazing shop. You can buy anything expensive in Harrods. If you look at the turnover of the British fishing industry, every year, £725 million. It's a lot of money. The turnover of Harrods, one shop, £2 billion. But if all this money is being spent, and frankly, to be honest, most of it's going on property, because really, if you want to spend a lot of money, you need to spend it on property. Why don't we know about it? Well, we don't know about it because they're doing it through shell companies. So let me try and show you how that works. So this is, let's say, this book is a house. I own it, you can see I own it, I've got it in my hand, but if instead of owning it directly, I own it via a plain wrapper, a shell company in, let's say, in the British Virgin Islands, and then that shell company in the British Virgin Islands, that's owned via a trust in, let's put it in Jersey. There you go. Now you can't see anything at all. And just to be on the safe side, let's own the trust in Jersey with an anonymised bank account in, let's put it in Switzerland. There you go. Now all it looks like is, well, it doesn't look like anything really, does it? Because that's Switzerland, Jersey, British Virgin Islands, all concealing my ownership of this house. Simple. Now we're going to have a look at one person who's bought one of those houses. What we're looking at here, apart from me, obviously, is £60 million worth of house. And if that doesn't look like much house for £60 million, that's because you're only looking at half of it. It goes down as much as it goes up. In the second basement there is a swimming pool. And this belongs to a gentleman called Dmitry Firtash, a Ukrainian who made an absolute fortune by essentially allying with Gazprom, with Vladimir Putin, to overcharge everyone in Ukraine for gas. The deal he imposed on Ukraine back in 2006-07 was so onerous that essentially it destroyed the government in Ukraine, the government collapsed, and he made an absolute fortune. But once you've made an absolute fortune in Ukraine, you don't really want to spend it there. So he came here to spend it instead. And did he spend it? He spent it in Cambridge University, he was on the Guild of Benefactors. By 2011, only 3 years after he'd arrived, he was hanging out with the Duke of Edinburgh. That's pretty impressive social climbing for anyone from Ukraine. And then obviously he needed somewhere to live. So he bought this, 2012, from mega developer Mike Spink. But even this wasn't really enough. And if you look in the distance, that's a tube station. £53.3 million, he bought that from the Ministry of Defence in early 2014. But sadly, the problem for him is that the American authorities took a rather less relaxed attitude to the origin of his wealth than the British ones did. And they've indicted him for corruption, and he's currently sitting in Vienna battling extradition to the United States, so he doesn't even get to enjoy this beautiful house. But the moral of the story isn't really about appalling houses or Rolexes. It's about the fact that this entire part of London, and in fact this entire city, is making a living from sucking in money from people who really shouldn't have it and taking it from places that really, really need it. And we don't really even get anything from it, because all it means is we don't have shops that normal people might want to go to, like people who don't want Rolexes. And we don't have houses that normal people can live in, because no one can afford a £60 million house apart from Ukrainian billionaires. And this is essentially the message of Moneyland, that we have created a system that benefits only the richest, and it really works against everyone else in the world. And so I hope, if you read the book, you'll understand a few reasons why this is so bad, and a few of the tools that we can start using to try and turn the tide back to the world as it used to be before money essentially broke free of any kind of control.